In this week's Sunday Opinion, we're looking at the consequences for the Isle of Man of the failed Commons vote last Tuesday and what comes next. And our studio guest is the Chief Minister Howard Quayle. Well, we've been talking really about administrative and regulatory things and what's happening there, but there are the basics of how this is going to affect the Manx economy, which obviously is significantly different to chunks of the UK economy. I mean, for instance, even though it's not such a big player as it used to be, we still have banking, we still have insurance, we still have a variety of other service-type related industries which weren't included in Protocol 3 in the first instance.
Well, absolutely, Roger, you've hit a key element there. Now, the Isle of Man's relationship with the European Union is obviously governed by Protocol 3. So major sectors of our economy and finance and digital services should be relatively unaffected in a no-deal scenario, as we're already a third country for services. As I've said before, it's agriculture, fisheries, manufacturing, the movement of people that were the key areas where we were really concerned about. Now, for those moving goods in and out of the EU, much depends on if there is a no deal, if it's disorderly or managed in some way merely disruptive. But importers and exporters might need to plan to anticipate some delays in the border and short-term stock or dispatch issues.
It's very difficult if you got fish, for instance, or scallops and that type of thing. They won't wait, will they?
Well, absolutely. It can, despite it being packed in ice, etc., a day's delay could cause the freshness. Is price sensitive, so the fresher the product, the better price that you get. So these are key issues, and much as I'd love to say we've got all the answers at this moment aren't there. But it's not just ourselves who have this problem, it's the UK, and therefore they will be working hard to ensure that there is a free flow of these sorts of goods. But equally, we have to remember that it's in the European Union's interests for there to be two-way traffic. There's an awful lot of goods that the European Union need from the United Kingdom
and sell to the United Kingdom,
and also an awful lot of the products that Ireland produces go through the United Kingdom to go to the European Union. So they're in a very difficult position, and therefore, whilst people are talking, well, there could be horrendous delays, maybe just initially, but it's in everyone's interests to make the flow of goods as seamless as possible.
Well, the Netherlands have just employed another 1,000 customs officials on the grounds that they expect a no deal.
Yeah, well, people have always been asking me, what do I see of the scenario? And I've said I sincerely hope to be proved wrong, but due to institutional stubbornness, I feel a no deal scenario is the scenario that's staring us down the line, sort of thing. But I hope to be proved wrong on that one. But you've got to plan. I think I always quote this: if you go into the first Sea Lord's office in London, above the door in Latin is "Civis pacem parabellum." If you want peace, prepare for war. And therefore, we on the Isle of Man have taken it that we will plan for a no-deal scenario. Because if there is a negotiated deal, then you'll have an extension. There will be a period of time to take that forward up until December 2020, a transitional period, and that will enable you to get everything sorted. But you have to prepare for the worst deal scenario, that the UK will crash out at 11 o'clock on the 29th of March of this year.
Now, we were talking about business. We've talked about all sorts to do with business, but we've two other elements of our economy, not these days quite as large an amount as it used to be, but still significant. That's farmers and animals. Now, that's going to seriously affect them, isn't it, come what may?
Well, that's right. The majority of lamb produced on the Isle of Man is exported. I think the biggest problem will be the lightweight lambs that come off the hills, and they have been historically, some of those have found their way into the European Union. So that is an element that will have to be factored into. And alternative markets, or will there be a premium? As I say, there may well be a no tariff on these areas, because if the UK needs it, then it's in their interests to get it at as reasonable a price as possible.
Well, my son-in-law's French, and his uncle runs a very large food wholesalers in eastern France, and he reckons that he could sell almost as much Manx lamb as he can get his hands on at the moment.
Well, I suppose I was hearing that not long ago there was a heads of European Union meal in Switzerland, and on the menu was Manx lamb. So, but we have to take in mind that Spain, for instance, grows a large amount of fresh vegetables which find their way in, and fruit which finds its way into the United Kingdom and onto the Isle of Man. And therefore, if the European Union are going to play silly with the movement of fish, for etc., or scallops or queenies into the European Union from the UK and the Isle of Man, then they're going to experience the same problem with the other way around with fresh vegetables, where if you've got a big surplus, the United Kingdom is the logical market to go to. So I sincerely hope that common sense will prevail and you will have a seamless a journey both ways for those areas.
The problem is an awful lot of this is relying on hope at the moment, isn't it?
Well, it is, and it's back to that the question that you asked me, Roger, what can we do? And the answer is we can't influence the outcome, but we have to ensure that we are as well prepared as possible so that come what may, whatever's thrown at us, we can react as quickly as possible. And that's what we've set out to do, and I like to think we've done a good job.
Well, the fishing industry has been struggling for a while in one way and another, and it's interesting that Al Jazeera, the Arab news service, was showing, the only place I've seen it, but they were talking about fears of a new cod war in the south of England, at Newland and around Cornwall, because if there was a no deal, the French boats would be in overnight. And I mean, do we have protection in our waters if there's a no deal?
Well, that will have to be renegotiated. I mean, I know some of our fishermen are concerned, but equally there could be an opportunity, because at the moment, European Union boats can come into the territory. Well, we've got obviously our 3 mile protected, but the 12 mile, there are certain UK boats that can come in and from Ireland into our waters to fish. Now, for example, we don't have a quota for whitefish, and it could well be that if the UK says, right, our territorial waters up to the 12 mile limit cannot be fished by the European Union, it could well be that our fishermen may end up with a greater quota or a quota in elements that they haven't had for a long time. So there are opportunities for our fishermen, but there are also initial concerns with the fact that 90% of their product caught by Manx fishing boats is sold into the European Union.
If half a dozen Brittany fishing boats, big ones, which they are generally, turned up in the Manx waters, how do we deal with it?
Well, they don't have the legal right to be there, so the Barul would be out there.
That doesn't seem to worry them in this
Well, I
instance,
think the Barul would be out there pretty quick, and we would be.
But would it be able to deal with them? Or are you going to have to call on the British Navy?
Well, we do pay a contribution every year to the Isle of Man for the armed forces and Coast Guard, etc. So yes, if that scenario escalated up, then of course we would look for help to maintain our rights in our territorial waters.
There's one, coming back to the common travel area again for a moment, I still don't fully understand how that's going to work in the case of a no deal, because the citizens of the Northern Ireland can come into the Isle of Man without hindrance. Mm-hmm. Citizens from the Southern Ireland can come into the Isle of Man without hindrance.
Yep.
So what's to stop people using the Isle of Man as a means of the other territories?
Well, we would obviously, when you fly in, there would be checks for non-common travel area residents, and obviously we have factored in that worst case scenario. We will have to employ additional customs officers to monitor the ports on the island, Ramsey, Peel, etc., to ensure that it's not being abused.
Because there is a loophole there, isn't there? A potential loophole.
A potential loophole, but it's a loophole that we've obviously spotted and have a plan to, ensure that it doesn't become a loophole.
There is a concern that there will become a shortage of certain types of medicines and pills and potions, because the European Medicines Agency is relocating from London to Amsterdam, for instance, and quite a lot of, if you look at the boxes and you look at what's on them, a lot of the pills and things that come into the Isle of Man and are dispensed here do not originate in the UK.
I'm really pleased that you've raised this issue, Roger, because it's something I want to reassure that the people of the Isle of Man. Now, we're holding weekly contingency planning meetings with our counterparts. This is from the Department of Health and Social Care, with their counterparts in the UK. Now, there's no indication that the Isle of Man is in a different position from similar parts of the UK. the official position of NHS England and the UK government's Commercial Medicines Unit, the CMU as it's known, is that the purchasers, which is hospitals, GP, surgeries, etc., they should not stockpile, but that the wholesalers and suppliers in the UK have been asked to increase stock levels to hold a 6-week supply. Now, the supplies of medicines to both community pharmacies and the Isle of Man hospitals is predominantly through UK wholesalers. So the stock movement is being monitored and unusual movement suggestions of stockpiling are being investigated. But I think what we do on the Isle of Man anyway, because of the weather, for example, we normally keep a 4-week supply of all medicines on the Isle of Man. At Christmas time, because of the holiday periods, etc., we expand that to 6 weeks, and then when the Christmas New Year period is over, we go back down to a 4-week stock. And we are, as part of our planning, we are not going to go down from a 6-week. Well, now that the New Year and Christmas holidays are over, we're not going to go down to the 4-week stocking level. We're going to stay at 6 weeks. And as I say, we have an agreement, a document in writing from the UK government that the Isle of Man will be treated on the same footing as the United Kingdom, and therefore should we have any supply problems, we can apply to the UK central depot, for want of a better word, to ensure that those supplies find their way to the Isle of Man. But we will be keeping a 6-week supply.
At more cost, no doubt.
Well, there is a cost involved, however, nowhere near the cost of people's. I remember when the avian flu pandemic happened in an element of the United Kingdom, and this is before my time, but there was an entire supply bought for everyone on the Isle of Man, and it cost a few £100,000. I remember taking over as Health and Social Care Minister in 2014, touring all our facilities, and I came to this warehouse where all that vaccine was having to be skipped because it had gone past its shelf life. So it's okay stockpiling for 6 months. You would have a fantastic cost of money to find, but B, you could waste an awful lot of it because some medicines have a very limited shelf life. So I think keeping our levels at 6 weeks, but ensuring that we're part of a central UK area for the supply of medicines has got to be the most sensible way forward. And I'm delighted that our officers and medics in health and social care have come up with a strategy, and therefore there shouldn't be a problem for people.
There are reports at the moment that there's a shortage of supply of certain things, and therefore the costs have gone up a lot.
Well, I suppose no matter how much you reassure people that these areas have been covered and there is a system in place should there be a no-deal scenario, people will go out and stockpile. There's nothing that you can do to some human nature for certain people. However, we are in a very good position and we do have reserves. And as I say, buying medicines and stockpiling, you could be out of pocket because some of them only have a very short shelf life. It's another area you asked me a while back, Roger. What was I reassuring the nearly 300 people that turned up to the Comus Hotel? It was an exceptionally well attended talk on Friday, and the other one was fuel, and the Isle of Man will be totally unaffected for the provision of diesel, petrol, central heating oil, and gas. We've looked into all of that, and it will be business as usual.
Okay.